Smith Show coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio and usually ESPN News. Today we are on ESPNU, by the way, but we're usually on ESPN News. Number to call up as always is 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, which is being brought to you by mycomputercareer.edu. Training for a better life. Time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. Lots of stuff to get into today. Kevin Durant got himself ejected last night from an NBA game. I'll talk to you a little bit about that. Obviously, Mike McCarthy, former coach for the Green Bay Packers, spoke out about life after working alongside Aaron Rodgers. We'll talk a little bit about that. Russell Wilson has given the Seattle Seahawks a deadline of April 15th, if I remember correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's April 15th to sign him to a new long-term deal. We'll talk about that. It's not much to talk about as far as I'm concerned as it pertains to Russell Wilson. Give him his money. Give him his money. We've got 2 mock drafts out by the great Mel Kiper Jr. along with the great Todd McShay. 2 of the best in the business as far as I'm concerned, and their first 7 picks in this upcoming NFL draft are identical. Both have Kyler Murray going number 1 to Arizona, Nick Bosa going number 2 to San Francisco, Josh Allen, the outside linebacker out of Kentucky, going to the New York Jets at number 3, defensive tackle for Alabama, Quinnen Williams, going number 4 to Oakland, linebacker extraordinaire out of LSU, Devin White, who I had the pleasure of meeting yesterday, going number 5 to Tampa Bay. Dwayne Haskins, quarterback out of Ohio State, going number 6 to the New York Giants to replace Eli Manning eventually, succeed him. And, of course, number 7, Jawan Taylor, offensive tackle out of Florida, going to Jacksonville, obviously, to assist in protecting Nick Foles. They differ at number 8. McShay's got Hawkinson, the tight end out of Iowa, going number 8 to Detroit, whereas Mel Kiper Jr. has defensive end Montez Sweat, or Sweat rather, going out of Mississippi State, going to Detroit. So, we'll talk about all of that as the show progresses today. First order of business is a couple of things. First thing on my mind would be Bryce Harper. Now, I'll tell you something right now. The nation's capital they've got some damn nerves. Now, I know all of you out there are going to look at Bryce Harper, and you're going to sit up there and say he left them. He left them high and dry, signed a 13-year, $330 million deal to be a member of the Philadelphia Phillies. Not only did he leave, Stephen A., but he left for a team within the same division. How the hell are they supposed to feel? That's what you're going to say. I get it. And I'd even understand it if you're a Yankee and you're going to be a Red Sox, or you're a Red Sox and you decided to go to the Yankees. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you're joining an evil empire. And if that's the analogy that you want to use, so be it. But I beg to differ. And I'll tell you why. When you look at Bryce Harper and the fact that he was serenaded with booze throughout most of the night, particularly in warm-ups, particularly as he was in the batting circle waiting to come up, batting third, particularly they laughed at him. Only time that they didn't boo him was when they were cheering over the fact that Scherzer had struck him out the first go-round. Now, he got his revenge in the 8th inning when he smacked that 450-foot 2-run shot. And by the way, Bryce Harper thus far is batting about 429. Batting about 429. With a slugging percentage of OPS like 1,100 plus. The man has looked absolutely sensational thus far. He's got 3 home runs. He's got about 5 or 6 RBIs. He is flat out bowling and looking like an MVP candidate. Obviously, it's 162 games. Obviously, it's incredibly, incredibly early. Who the hell knows what's going to happen as the season progresses? I will remind you they gave him $330 million for a reason, though. I will remind you that the dude is only 26 years of age. I will remind you that when you look at him and what he brings to the table, You are projecting what he's going to do based on what he has done at such an early age thus far. And about the only thing that you can say about Bryce Harper is that he ain't Mike Trout. But I got news for you. He might be in a better situation than Mike Trout. Philadelphia Phillies undefeated thus far. Am I right, Nuno? They're about 4-0. Bryce Harper and these boys, what are they, 1-6? I'm sorry, Mike Trout and these boys in the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, they're about 1-6. I mean, what the hell is going on? When you look at them right now, who's got the better end of the stick? Mike Trout's got more money. There's two things that Mike Trout, and by the way, he deserves every damn penny, let's be clear. But there's two things right now that Mike Trout has going for him with the 1-5 Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. He's got more money, and he's in better weather. So in terms of his quality of life off the baseball diamond, he clearly is winning. Now, one could argue that his $426 million, Nuno, his $426 million, JC, his $426 million, Jonathan, one could argue that with the taxes in California, I mean, damn, they might be breaking even. Because when you're talking about Pennsylvania, what are we talking about? 4% state income tax? Was it 4 or 6? I think it's 4. Might be 3, damn it. Whereas Bryce Harper, you're at about 13%. You take federal income taxes into consideration. You're talking about this brother being taxed on about 52% of his money. Bryce Harper ain't got that problem. Bryce Harper might be spending about 43% in taxes. So y'all do the math. But I digress. My point is, Bryce Harper, outside of the weather and more of a salary, Bryce Harper's in a better situation. Philadelphia's 4-0. Philadelphia is expected to be a contender. They're expected and anticipated to make the postseason. Ain't nobody accusing the Anaheim Angels of doing that, the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Ain't nobody accusing them of doing that. You got Osmus there. They ain't going to correct the problem. You need more. You need more than Trout. Bryce Harper, by the way, I'd make the argument, better fan base. Philadelphia, that rabid fan base that ain't letting you off the hook, that's going to hold you accountable. They drove down from Philly to D.C. just to be there to support Bryce Harper in his first game back on the home turf of the Washington Nationals, where he played and starred for the last few years. Let me tell you something right now. Those Bulls, they're misguided. Now, some people say, oh, Stephen A., hey, what's your problem? What's your problem? They have the right to boo. They're the paying customer. Yeah, we know. That's not the point. Here's the point. Did the Washington Nationals do everything they could to keep Bryce Harper? Your first offer was for $300 million, not $330 million. $100 million of it was deferred over 33 years. So essentially, what you were doing was, you came to Bryce Harper with the kind of lowball offer you knew neither him nor Boris would accept. And as a result, Scott Boris, that is, and as a result, you knew that he was leaving. You practically pushed him out the damn door. And oh, by the way, if I remember correctly, Nuno, the report stated that their second offer to Bryce Harper was worse than the first offer. When you knew Manny Machado was going to get $300 million, when you could anticipate that Trout was going to get over $400 million, you come to Bryce Harper with $100 million deferred over 33 years. You didn't want to keep that boy. You didn't want to keep that man. You pushed him out the door. So if you're fans of the Washington Nationals, how come you ain't booing the organization? How come you're not booing them? That's what I want to know, because as far as I'm concerned, that's exactly what the hell you should be doing. That is you absolutely positively have got to be kidding me. 26 years old with his upside, and you're going to come to him with an offer where a third of the money is deferred, and we ain't talking about a deferment over a couple of years. We're talking about deferred over 33 years. So in other words, here's $200 million instead of $300 million, and the other $100 million, ladies and gentlemen, we will defer up until Bryce Harper is 59 years old. Think about how much damn sense that makes. That's what they did. And nobody's talking about that, but it needs to be talked about because I would dare say this. It was very disrespectful. It was very disrespectful to make a star of his caliber such an offer. It was insulting. Think about that. What star do you know would have accepted that? Secondly, by the way, you got a manager in Dave Martinez, who I respect, but I got news for you, Nuno. He ain't better than Dusty Baker. So far, not good. Bryce Harper was better under Dusty Baker than he was with Dave Martinez. Just look at the numbers. So I look at it from that standpoint, and I say, what the hell's going on here? And y'all booing him? How you going to boo him? Because he left you? Who the hell would want to be in the nation's capital in this day and age? Even though I'm about to go down there in a couple of days, by the way. But who would want to be down there? With all the mess going on in the nation's capital, who would want to be there? And oh, by the way, that's Redskins town. Only time y'all care about the Nationals is when you want 35,000 people to show up to boo Bryce Harper, or when you make the postseason. Other than that, you ain't really caring about the Washington Nationals in the nation's capital. That's Redskins country. And even though Philadelphia is Eagles country, do you see how they support the Philadelphia 76ers basketball team? Did you see how they supported the Phillies when the Phillies was making a run? In back-to-back years, winning a World Series and losing another to the Yankees? With Ryan Howard and Chase Utley and those boys? I'm sorry. Philadelphia is a phenomenal sports town. For better or worse, you can love them, you can hate them. What you can never accuse them of is apathy, with the exception of when the process was contaminating the world of sports because Sam Hinkie was your GM and you had Josh Harris as your owner and you announced to the audience that you were going to lose on purpose for 5 damn years, which was criminal, which is why the league got involved and ultimately Jerry Colangelo, the managing director of Team USA, also took over as a strong advisor to the Philadelphia 76ers. Unfortunately, he went the route of bringing his son in, engaging in that kind of nepotism. Before that didn't pan out, and now Elton Brand is on the scene doing a hell of a job, by the way. Elton Brand got Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris in Philly with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons while keeping J.J. Redick at damn near half the price you were paying him last year. Elton Brand is doing a hell of a job. A hell of a job. Along with Scott O'Neal and Harris and the rest of their hierarchy in the Philadelphia 76ers. You should be very proud of what you're seeing from the 76ers right now. And now here come the Phillies. You got Andrew McCutchen in the offseason. You got Bryce Harper in the offseason. And not only do you got a stud like him, but he's turning around and telling you he's going to recruit for you. So I think Bryce Harper made a good move. I think Philadelphia got a real good contract because their attitude is if they get good out of him for the 10 years, the last 3 ain't going to matter. And I think it's clearly a better situation than the Washington Nationals. So if you're a Washington Nationals fan, why don't you boo the team? Not Bryce Harper. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. I want to switch to another subject, and that involves Russell Westbrook. Got a triple-double last night. 20 points, 20 rebounds, 21 assists, or 21 assists and 20 rebounds, whatever it was. His goal was to register 20, 20, and 20. He showed up to the game wearing a blue shirt with Crenshaw on it. Obviously, Russell Westbrook is from L.A., born and raised, got a lot of friends out there. One of his friends was slain rap artist Nipsey Hussle, who was gunned down in front of his very own clothing store Sunday afternoon in L.A. First things first, my condolences. I don't know if she's his girlfriend or his fiance. I apologize for not knowing specifically what she is. I know that they have a kid together. They're obviously dating, and I think they were on the course to get married. Laura London, um, great young actress, promising future. My heart and condolences goes out to her and all the loved ones of Nipsey Hussle. Um, Former gang member, um, was associated with the Rolling 60s, Crip group based out of Crenshaw, L.A. Look, Russell Westbrook dedicating his performance to that brother. We heard from LeBron James, Chris Paul, Steph Curry, Paul George, so many others that sent out their heartfelt condolences to the loved ones and family members of Nipsey Hussle. I can't say enough about this young brother. He's 33 years of age, gone entirely too soon. And by the way, just for clarification, just to make sure I worded it correctly, the Rolling 60s neighborhood Crips are they're Crips based out of L.A. And that's who obviously Nipsey Hussle was associated with, but he ventured beyond that, wanted to give back to the community, tirelessly worked, not just to be an entrepreneur and a philanthropist, incredibly charitable with his time, his money, his guidance. He was somebody that was committed to eradicating violence, to eradicating gang violence. A matter of fact, on the day that he was gunned down, he was actually scheduled to meet with law enforcement officials in the area to discuss curbing the violence. According to law enforcement officials, his death was not gang-related. It was a specific individual that he had gotten into an argument with. Apparently, they had known each other for some time. He got into an argument with the individual. The individual decided to come back with a gun and gunned him down. The irony in all of it, and I won't belabor this point, but the irony in all of it is that Eric Holder is the kid's name, is the young man's name, 29 years of age, who has been charged with Nipsey Hussle's murder. Eric Holder, it's the same name of Eric Holder, who served as the 82nd Attorney General of the United States of America from 2009 to 2015, working under President Barack Obama at the time. I'm incredibly sad. I'm almost speechless because to those players that knew Nipsey Hussle personally, I empathize with them because I've lost friends to gun violence as well. And since they knew him personally, I have no doubt, no question whatsoever that their hearts were heavy. And obviously, I'm certainly not questioning the sincerity of it all. My focus just goes to a different place. Because on so many occasions, we complain and we deal so much about others harming our individuals from the African American community. And in my opinion, we don't talk nearly as much as we should about black on black violence. It's pretty hard, in my opinion, to look at other communities. Not saying that you shouldn't. If you're racist, if you engage in white supremacy and all of those other things, that's not good either. But it's incredibly, incredibly difficult for me to focus my attention on the actions of other people outside of my community. when every time I turn around, black folks are killing each other. We've lamented this on a number of occasions. In the streets of Chicago where thousands of people was getting killed, I saw black parents on television calling for the National Guard to intervene because the violence in Chicago was so bad. And nobody paid attention. But Jesse Smollett, the actor from the show Empire, who was accused by Chicago police of faking a hate crime against himself, manufacturing a hate crime against himself. Oh, that went viral. That was news everywhere. Nipsey Hussle, now gone from us, 33 years of age, good brother, loved by many, somebody that made it out, but wouldn't leave, was committed to giving back to his own community and communities everywhere where the impoverished and the disenfranchised were being affected by violence. He wanted to eradicate it and did something about it. He didn't just talk about it. He was striving to do things about it. And when it was taken from us. For what? We don't know the whole story. We don't know the details. We don't know where this emanates from. We don't know specifically what happened. We know that there's a child that no longer has their father with them. We know there's a beautiful, wonderful young actress that loved the man in her life. She's got to say goodbye to him. We've seen NBA players and professional athletes all over the place that knew this dude personally, who walked around with heavy, heavy hearts. And no one truly, truly knows why. We can only imagine. Here's what we do know. Another black man was gunned down by a black man. And we don't talk nearly enough about that as we should. At some point in time, we're going to have to. You want others to change? Want others to change their behavior towards us? We got to make sure we're doing everything we can to change our behavior towards ourselves. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. You're listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. It's on ESPNU for this particular day. That was Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage of America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. Back with your calls and more in a minute. By the way, when you're hiring, you don't want to waste time sorting through dozens of irrelevant resumes. You want an efficient way to get to a short list of qualified candidates. That's why you need Indeed.com. Post a job in minutes, set up screening questions based on your job requirements, then zero in on qualified candidates using an intuitive online dashboard. Discover why 3 million businesses use Indeed for hiring. Post a job today at Indeed.com/hire. Search for greatness. Search Indeed. Back with more in a minute. Here's the Select Quote term life insurance difference. Most companies give you one option, one policy, one rate. But Select Quote shops and gets you up to 10 options from highly rated life insurers. For a free personalized quote, call 1-800-601-6992 or go to selectquote.com.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And you can always get in touch with the show through the 1-800-FLOWERS Twitter feed.
Stephen A. Smith Show is being brought to you by Credit Karma. Get your truly free credit scores and free credit monitoring from Credit Karma today. That's Credit Karma, K-A-R-M-A. Get knowing. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. Frank Isola, NBA writer and analyst extraordinaire for the New York Daily News. Plus, he's got his own radio show on Sirius XM, the NBA channel. He'll be on with us to start off hour number 2. Always looking forward to talking to him, not just about the Knicks, but about all things NBA. That's my buddy right there. I'm looking forward to having that conversation. Until then, we'll get back to the phones. Been talking about Nipsey Hussle, talking about Russell Westbrook and the triple-double, the 2020-20. Obviously, that was a tribute to Nipsey Hussle and obviously the association with the Rolling 60s, the Crips gang out of L.A., and Russell Westbrook, born and raised in the streets of Los Angeles, knows a few of these guys. And, he's doing great things. Nipsey Hussle was doing great things, and he was playing with a heavy heart last night. Billy Donovan, to his credit, understood that, along with his teammates Paul George and others. LeBron James, Steph Curry, Chris Paul, Paul George, and others obviously did what they could to pay tribute. Kevin Durant as well did what they could to pay tribute to Hustle's departure from us, senselessly murdered Sunday in front of his own clothing store, passed away far too early at the age of 33. To the phones we go. Let's go to Chris. You're live with Stephen A. Talk to me, man.
Hey, how you doing, Stephen A? I agree with you about 99% of the time. The only thing that I'm kind of having trouble with is this Nipsey Hussle thing, and you describing him as a good man. To me, someone who is a part of the Rolling Crips, I don't think these guys, are selling Girl Scout cookies.
Start right there. So, start right there. I'll let you speak, but let me educate you about something. First of all, he used to be associated with it. Secondly, his philanthropy, his charity, his charitable tendencies, his commitment to uplifting his community, the starting and igniting businesses in his area and what have you, the people that he employed, the fact that he was working in concert with law enforcement officials to eradicate gang violence, and he's been doing that for years. Those are the reasons that I said what I said. That's number one. And number two, I would respectfully, and I totally mean respectfully. I'm not coming at you in any kind of way whatsoever, Chris. I do want you to understand something, however, because it's the kind of thing that needs to be discussed more. And by the way, by people more knowledgeable than I. Yes, I'm streetwise. Yes, I was born and raised in the streets of New York City. Yes, I know a lot about the streets, but I'm 51 years of age. And there are challenges that I had to overcome and what have you that others had that were far more excessive because I had the greatest mama in the world and I had both parents in my home and et cetera, et cetera. When you are born and raised into certain situations, do you have any idea what kind of Herculean effort it takes just to get out? Because they don't let you out. Going to school, literally an elementary school, a junior high school, literally it is a challenge for a lot of kids in America just to go to school because of the streets that you have to walk through to get to school. So understand that there's an element of that life that some people in our population will never truly and fully understand. And I'll give you an example before I let you speak again. I forgot where the case was, but it happened a couple of years ago. There was a gang member, and this has nothing to do with Crips, Bloods, or anybody else. There was a gang member. I believe it was in the streets of Chicago. They were after this individual. They couldn't find him, so they shot his 9-year-old son. That's the kind of life at times that you're asking people to overcome. So when they do it, recognize that and understand and appreciate. Just imagine what kind of stuff it takes to get yourself out of that situation and to elevate yourself to a point where law enforcement officials are supporting you and trying to help you overcome those challenges. Go ahead,
okay.
Chris.
Okay, Stephen A., I have a similar situation to you. I grew up in Brooklyn. I went to Lafayette High School, one of the worst high schools in Brooklyn. I get what you're saying. All I'm trying to say is on the media side, when we describe a great man, okay, a good man, yes, he definitely didn't deserve to die. But the reports are he got killed because they were discussing about this person being a snitch. What I'm saying is if you're a good man and you're out of a life, You're not worrying about anybody snitching on you. You're a good man, a pastor, a priest.
No. How do you hold on? How do you know? Hold on, Chris. How do you know he wasn't being approached and accused of such things, since he was the one that was scheduled to meet with law enforcement officials to discuss eradicating gang violence? Why would he be talking about to somebody about snitching? They probably, and again, I didn't see that story, so I don't know. But hypothetically speaking, embracing the allegation that you just threw in my direction, it would be the person approaching him thinking he's snitching because he's the one that's working with law enforcement officials to eradicate violence in the inner city community.
Exactly, and you're talking about black-on-black crime. I'm just trying to say is, do you think there's a bigger responsibility from the media to when they're describing people in their communities as good men and the men you want to look up to? Like, what happens if I don't think he was walking a straight line. Like, I know me, I listened to I heard his music. I don't think someone like that is uplifting.
Let me ask you a question.
To his music and his album.
All right. Well, let me say this to you. I'm not going to go that route.
Am I wrong? Am I wrong?
Well, I'm not going to say you're wrong. You're entitled to your feelings. If people are telling a story about where they came from, the lingo, the language, the vernacular, etc., that's used, I don't expect you to understand that. I certainly don't condone it for the most part, because some of it, for example, I'm a dad. I wouldn't let my daughters listen to that stuff. I get it. I understand it. But I also refrain from engaging in condemnation towards individuals that had to bust their tail to overcome obstacles I never was confronted by, nor you, and never had the challenge of having to overcome those things. If you come from the gutter, there's something to be said, for example, about working a 9-to-5 job. There's something to elevate you. Now, for me, a 9-to-5 job ain't enough. Why is it not enough? Because I didn't have to come from such a gutter-type circumstance where I had all the odds stacked against me, because I had the most wonderful mother in the world. And I had, and literally, I've told this story, so I'm sharing it with you, Chris. We're talking as brothers right here. I'm sharing this with you. Drug dealers saved my life because they wouldn't allow me to be them. They said, we have a choice. We didn't have a choice, Stephen A. You do. You will not do this. You go right back on that basketball court at PS 192 Junior High School in Hollis, Queens, off 24th Street. You go and you shoot your jumpers. You got 2 hours. Nobody's going to touch you. Nobody's going to bother you. Nobody going to do anything right now. You go shoot your jumpers. And then when the sun went down, get the hell out of here and go home. They wouldn't allow me to do it.
One thing, these guys that were drug dealers, they did something good for you, but would you consider them good men?
Well, it depends on, no, I wouldn't consider them good if they were still doing it. But once you remove yourself from it and you've elevated yourself to another level, I got to give you credit for that. And I also have to take into account you being stuck. When somebody tells you there ain't no out, you ain't getting out, you do this or else you're done. And you know what they mean by done. Sometimes you don't have those choices. And I'm saying you can't just sit up there and look at stuff blanketly and act like that doesn't factor into the equation. I'm not saying you should want to celebrate them. Coming from your vantage point, I understand. But I'm telling you from my vantage point, seeing what I've seen, knowing what I personally had to experience, and then understanding that their experiences were far worse, for this man to step up and to do what he did in the community, and to do what he could to eradicate violence, to make life in the streets and beyond safer, not just for former gang members, present gang members, but all human beings. I think that's something special. And I think that there's nothing wrong with recognizing that and applauding cats who love him because of that reality. I don't see anything wrong with that, Chris. I got to go, though. And I appreciate the call. But I got to go, and I get your point, Chris. And I don't want to come across like you totally wrong for feeling the way. You're entitled to your feelings, but that's based on your experiences. Others have a different kind of experience, and I don't think that's something that could be ignored. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Clearly, Russell Westbrook felt that way. LeBron James felt that way. Steph Curry felt that way. People that know about the efforts that have been put forth or that were put forth by a guy like Nipsey Hussle, understanding where he came from. Listen, Snoop Dogg, look at the good that Snoop Dogg has done. Look at the good that Ice Cube has done. Where do you think they came from? You have any idea how special those brothers were? It's not just because of what they're doing. It's what they had to go through to get to the point where they were allowed to do it. They ain't just friends, they're brothers. I love Ice Cube. I love Snoop Dogg, and I'm always going to love and appreciate them. Dr. Dre and others. You have any idea what they had to go through? You can't just look at where somebody's at. You got to understand where they came from to know what they're made of. 888 say ESPN. You listen to live to Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. By the way, you never know. You know what never goes out of style? Surprising a friend or loved one with a buy one, get one free multicolored rose bouquets. That's what. It's only for $29.99. And it's from 1-800-Flowers.com. So to order, go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. Back with more in a minute with Stephen A. ESPN Radio. And today, ESPNU.
Craving even more of Stephen A?
Him of all people.
For around-the-clock
I don't know how
access
much
to
better
the
I can
man,
explain.
I'm Stephen A.
you can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Stephen A. Smith and on Facebook at Stephen A.
Kentucky under John Calipari, 305 wins first. NCAA tournament wins, 31 first. Final 4 appearances, 4, I believe. That's first. Top 10 recruits, 23 of them. That's first. Lottery picks, 19 of them. 19 of them. Ladies and gentlemen, let me say this. Nobody deserves a lifetime contract. Now, you want to look at stuff like emeritus status, and I got it. I'm talking about active duty. Nobody deserves a lifetime contract. See, my attitude is very, very simple. If you sit in an elevated position where you get to hold people accountable, how do people not hold you accountable? Because you can't touch somebody with a lifetime contract. They can basically do what they want to do. They can't violate ethics clauses or at least flagrantly violate severe ones. But you basically don't have to ever worry about getting fired. I never get that story they told me years ago when the president went to Joe Paterno's house because, you know what, they weren't winning enough games. He wanted Joe Paterno gone. Joe Paterno threw him out of his house. You went to fire the man and he threw you out your house. Get the hell out of here. I'm not going anywhere. And obviously it had a lot to do with the money that Joe Paterno, the late Joe Paterno, generated for the program in the school, and I get that. But nobody deserves a lifetime contract. As long as you're in a position to hold other people accountable. Because guess what? Somebody needs to be able to hold you accountable. And how can they do that if you got a lifetime deal? Has nothing to do with John Calipari. I'm opposed to that for anybody who are on active duty. There are no lifetime contracts. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll even get political with you for a second and tell you I feel that way. I'm adamant about Supreme Court justices. I don't think they deserve lifetime contracts. I think Supreme Court justices should be a minimum of 45 years of age. And I think Supreme Court justices should have no more than 20 years in the business. No more than 20 years on the court. I don't agree with those lifetime appointments. You got cats in their 80s. I don't want, no.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And you can always get in touch with the show through the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed.
Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPNU for today. It's usually ESPN News. We are coming to you live from above the Heineken River Deck, South Street Seaport, Pier 17. Back to the phones we go. Sean, you're live with Stephen A. What's up, Sean?
What's going on? What's going on, Stephen A? How you
Talk to
doing,
me.
bro?
Talk to me, bro. Go ahead, man. How you doing?
Man, let me tell you something, man. So I heard your last caller, and
Sean, I need you to speak up and clear because you sound a bit muffled. Okay? Go ahead.
Sorry about
Go
that.
ahead. Don't worry about it. Go ahead, bro.
I heard your last caller, and people, everybody has a right to their opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But let me tell you a little background. Real quick. I know I don't have that on my sign, but I'm a blood. and I'm from Compton. I'm from Parvo, and I am a gang member, but I'm not a gang banger. And that was Nipsey. See, you don't understand what it's like to live in these streets out here, man. There's no such thing as I don't gangbang. That's not even an option. If somebody comes towards you and asks you where you from and you say I don't gangbang, you'll lose your life quicker because they think you're lying. You know what I mean? Nipsey was one of them type dudes, man. You can hear it in his music. I got something I want you to listen to, Stephen A. Whenever you get a chance, he got a song called Question Number One, and it was featuring Snoop Dogg. And
Sean, let me stop you. I need a favor from you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I got to get ready to go to a commercial break, and then after that, I got to interview somebody. But approximately 30 minutes past hour number 2, I want you to call back so I can give you a little more time. Can you do that?
30 minutes? No problem, Stephen.
30 minutes past hour number 2. Call back. I'll put you right on. All right?
No problem.
All right, man. Thank you so much. He's very important. Listen, what did he told you? He told you he's a member of the Bloods. He's calling from Compton, L.A., and he's trying to educate you about what life is like for a gang member. I think it's very, very important. That's why I asked him to call back hour number 2. I'm going to interview Frank Isola next first, though. Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPNU. Back more in a minute. ESPN News, although we're on ESPNU for this particular day. The number to call up as always is 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. The Stephen A. Smith Show is being brought to you by Credit Karma. Get your truly free credit scores and free credit monitoring from Credit Karma today. That's Credit Karma, K-A-R-M-A. Get knowing. Plus, need seats to a game? Download the Vivid Seats app and enter promo code CHAMPS at checkout to get 10% off your first order. Don't buy just any seat. Get a Vivid Seat. On the line with us right now is a buddy of mine. He's a former writer for the New York Daily News. He is now a writer for The Athletic, not to mention the fact that he has his own show on SiriusXM, the NBA channel, Morning Drive show. Does an outstanding job, contributes to a show Around the Horn on ESPN. One of the great NBA reporters there is, the one and only Frank Isola, my buddy. He is on the line with yours truly right now. What's going on, Frank? How are you, man? How's everything?
Stephen, how are you? Just so your audience knows, the last time I saw Steve, other than at the South Street Seaport, we're up in Syracuse for the big game. You and I wanted to see Zion Williamson play.
Yep.
Fortunately, he didn't play in that game, but Steve was sitting right in front of me. Derek Coleman was there, Billy Owen, Sherman Douglas, Roosevelt Bowie, who I have a mutual friend. I once took him to a Knick practice. All these Syracuse legends are up there. Who's the big name in the building that everyone wants to talk to? Stephen A.
There
Even
you go.
You trump Derek Coleman in Syracuse.
I wouldn't go that far. They weren't honoring me at midcourt, but I appreciate it. But Frank Isola, let's get right into it, man. First things first. You saw what you saw last night with Russell Westbrook's performance. What did you peel from it?
I mean, it was incredibly impressive. He's going to average a triple-double again for the third straight season. And, you know, when you think about some of these guys who are kind of stat chasing, all right, so he stayed in the game late to get that rebound. This is something that hadn't been done since February of 1968. And I'm telling you, I think we've heard Wilt Chamberlain's name more this year than any other time in the last probably 30 years. Yep. Every time James Harden does something, you hear Wilt Chamberlain. And if you're Russell Westbrook and you do something and you're the first person to do it since Wilt Chamberlain, that's pretty impressive. And I'll tell you what, here's what I'm rooting for. I want to see Oklahoma City finish 8th because then they'll probably get the Warriors in the first round.
You know what?
That would be fun.
Frank, let me interject there. Once upon a time, I felt like that when Oklahoma was battling for a top 3 seed. But I got to admit to you, I'm not that excited about it anymore because the way they've tailed off, I'm not that enamored with what I'm seeing from them. I don't know whether it was Paul George since the injury and he hasn't been shooting as well. Russell Westbrook is averaging 4.5 turnovers a game, averaged 4.8 last year. We know how great they are as players, but we also know how surreal Golden State is. To me, I could still see Golden State taking them out in 5 games.
No, I agree. And I just think the whole, the whole situation with Kevin Durant playing playoff games in Oklahoma City, obviously his relationship with Russell Westbrook. But you're right about the Thunder. There was a time, to me, the MVP race is 2 guys. It's Giannis and it's James Harden. But there was a while there where Paul George was certainly in the mix. He's tailed off a little bit. But even Russ, even though he's averaging a triple-double, you look at some of his numbers. You mentioned the turnovers. He's shooting from the free throw line. He's under 70% from the free throw line, and his shooting on threes has not been good. So while his scoring average is down, the assists and the rebounds are up, but his shooting has been pretty poor. And come playoff time on those key crucial possessions, is it going to be Paul George, who doesn't have the great history of making last-second shots in playoffs, or is it going to be Russell Westbrook? I agree with you, though. I just think the Warriors, even though they're kind of like, up and down regular season, which you kind of expect, I still think they have too much.
Frank Isola right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Frank, I don't have a problem with it, but that's me being an African-American, coming from the community that I come from. Nevertheless, the NBA is big business. We saw why Russell Westbrook did, who he dedicated it to, the passing of Nipsey Hussle and what have you. You see LeBron, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Paul George, and others, Chris Paul as well, all paying tribute to Nipsey Hussle. But you do have patrons out there, fans of the NBA who don't come from those communities, that'll hear about Nipsey Hussle, the fact that he was admittedly a former gang member, and they'll use that to frown upon as opposed to celebrate him the way that Russell Westbrook did last night. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, for one, I know what the background is, but he also was trying to do a lot of good things in the community. I thought
Absolutely.
It was interesting. Russell Westbrook walked into the arena with a T-shirt on that said Crenshaw.
Yep.
Which, obviously is where Nipsey Hussle is from. And, he's not the only NBA player that paid tribute. When they had the video of Kevin Durant basically telling Steph Curry that night, like, what had happened, and Curry has his hands on his head. He's in complete shock. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, if we all know that for the longest time, it really probably started, in the 90s, kind of this cross-section of the entertainment world in the NBA. So obviously a lot of NBA players know people in the entertainment industry. It's his friend. They're from LA. I didn't have a problem with it at all. I thought it was actually pretty touching. I don't know why anybody would have an issue with it.
It was incredibly touching. Both you and I agree, but we also know how people can be sometimes, which is why I asked the question, because I needed your perspective and people to hear it from you as well, not just me. We're talking to Frank Isola right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio and ESPN News. Let's transition to the Warriors. We saw what they did last night. I predicted that they would win by 30. I think they would have won by 30 had Kevin Durant not gotten himself ejected. I understand that we've reached a day and age where referees are saying you have no idea the kind of stuff these dudes are saying to us. They all need to be thrown out if they're going to talk to us that way, et cetera, et cetera. But what did you make of Kevin Durant's ejection? And how concerned are you that the potential temper tantrums that the Golden State Warriors could end up derailing their three-peat title hopes?
All they have to do is go back a couple of years ago with the whole situation with Draymond Green. And, something that went against them, I still believe cost them a playoff series, even though Kyrie Irving and LeBron played great in, games 5, 6, and 7. But it was still that Draymond Green suspension, which was a huge turning point. And, here they are coming off the situation on Friday against the Timberwolves. And I'll be honest with you, I understand how the league has changed the rule a little bit. I did think that should have been a three-pointer plus the foul for Kevin Durant. All right, so they waved that off. But Steph Curry, after he made his corner three, he's taunting the ref right there. And the ref easily could have given him a technical foul. So they let that one go. And, hey, you want to see something called that late in the game? No, but Kevin Durant did pull Karl-Anthony Towns' jersey. So they called the foul there. And we've seen this from the Warriors where they complain a lot. And I think going into the game, considering that they had the heavy fines, I'm sure the referees were on high alert. But Zach Zarber, you and I know him, Zach from Brooklyn, New York.
Yep.
Zach's been around for a long time. And I don't think Zach is just going to throw you out just for the heck of it. You're up 20 points in a game. Yeah, I actually felt it was a missed call. I think Paul Millsap kind of had his forearm in Durant's gut as he went up to shoot the ball. I agree with Kevin Durant. It's a missed call. But guess what? Over the course of the game, there are tons of missed calls. The Warriors act like they're the most persecuted team in the NBA. And we all like that. Steph Curry's a great guy, Klay Thompson. Steve Kerr's got a ton of technical fouls this year. But it's not just DeMarcus Cousins, Draymond, and Kevin Durant. Steve Kerr's got a bunch. So they kind of have that attitude about them. And you just go back a few years ago, it cost them a playoff series.
Well, I will tell you this, Frank. Let me debate that with you for a quick second. I get your point, and I don't disagree. But I would counter that with this argument. They're a relatively finesse team. People know it, so you end up getting physical with them because they're so gifted and they can shoot the ball so well. You know what the tendency is to get physical with them, make them feel your presence physically to some degree. That might cause them to complain. I had no problem with the tech. But DeMarcus Cousins came and blocked KD. Steve Kerr said, I got it, and was talking to the official. So I'm thinking that combined with it being KD, if you're Zach Zarber, you couldn't wait a few more seconds. I mean, you just got to give the quick hook like that. That's my point. 10 more seconds, and guess what? It might have been over. But you didn't even give the paying customer that, especially the way Kevin Durant was balling.
I totally understand that. And it was, 8 minutes to go in the third quarter. So there's still 20 minutes left in the game. And Kevin Durant was having a great game. I think he had 21 points by then, but still 20 minutes to go. But we also don't know if in the first quarter, second quarter, if something was said and Zach Zarber told Kevin Durant to watch. And once again, I think, that those fines came out yesterday that Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Draymond Green had all been fined for the comments they made about the referees. I think everyone was going to be on high alert, and I think the referees are going to have much less tolerance for it. And this isn't a first-year referee. Zach Zarber's been reffing for a long time, and I think, you want to say that he had an itchy trigger finger? Fine. But if you're Kevin Durant, you got to be smart enough there. 8 minutes to go in a game, you can't kind of cross that line. And I think we all kind of have a pretty good sense of what he said, which I guess was after he got
but Frank,
ejected.
But that was my point. It was after he was ejected. That's my point.
But they do this all the time. At one point, isn't going to stop. They seem to complain more than any team in the league, and they're the odds-on favorite to win the championship. And again, it's not just Kevin Durant. Like, everybody loves Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr's got a bunch of technicals this season as well. I thought the most encouraging thing to come out of the game was that Jokic did nothing against DeMarcus Cousins.
Nothing.
So in the last couple
got
of games,
destroyed.
DeMarcus Cousins shut down Karl Anthony Towns, and all right, so they're not going to play them in the playoffs. But Jokic, they could play at some point. It seems like a lot of guys are a little intimidated by DeMarcus Cousins, which probably isn't the worst thing in the world for the Warriors.
Frank Isola for The Athletic, for his own NBA show on Sirius XM. What's that channel, that NBA channel that you're on? Because I just pressed the NBA channel.
Sirius 207, XM 86, and I do it with Brian Scalabrine. He brings his Celtic pom-pom, so we got to calm him down every once in a while.
That's a nice transition. How do you explain what the hell has happened to the Boston Celtics this year, and should we believe that they got a really good chance of coming out of the Eastern Conference?
Yeah, it's amazing. If you go back to last season, the way the playoffs, the seeding broke down, they avoided playing Cleveland until the last possible series, and they had a lead with 5 minutes to go in that Game 7. They're actually not in a terrible place right now because chances, they're going to be the 4-5, either one. They might not have home court advantage, but if they do, they're going to play Indiana in the first round without Victor Oladipo. And Indiana's, Nate McMillan's done an unbelievable job this season, but you would think they could take out Indiana. Then it would be most likely a matchup with Milwaukee, and Milwaukee is Milwaukee's yet to win a playoff series with Giannis. They haven't won a playoff series since 2001, so all the pressure is going to be on Milwaukee, and the more battle-tested team is the Celtics. So I think the team that they're most worried about is Toronto, and the way that it's shaking down, they wouldn't have to play Toronto until the Eastern Conference Finals. So I actually think they sit in a pretty good position. I think this year, because of what happened last season without Kyrie, Gordon Hayward, that team had so much success, and Kyrie came back, and I think some of the young players would think, hang on a second, Cleveland made it to a finals without you. We made it to an Eastern Conference Finals without you. So, slow your roll a little bit, getting on us all the time and telling us that we're a bunch of young guys who don't understand everything. We did pretty well when you left the lineup on March 4th, or March 7th, I think it was, with that knee injury. And I think because they had that success early, I think clearly the chemistry has not been good because we know the talent is better, Steve. They got a closer now in Kyrie Irving.
Frank, you've covered the league for
it's not been good.
Frank, you've covered the league for a long time, man. I got to tell you what I believe. I believe Brad Stevens and Danny Ainge immediately inserting Gordon Hayward into that starting lineup to start the season was a problem.
Yep.
The fact is, you got, and I'm not trying to go to highly sensitive routes or whatever. I'm simply saying Gordon Hayward started Butler for Brad Stevens. There's got to be a personal affection there. Danny Ainge gave the man $130 million. You want that justified. You could have had him come back at the middle of the season, come off the bench, fully read and they would have raved and they would have supported him because he is an incredibly nice guy. They would have supported the hell out of him. But to know that he's not ready and to still not just put him in, but to start him, I think it compromised Jason Tatum. I think it compromised Jaylen Brown. I think to a strong degree it compromised Terry Rozier, and they haven't recovered. To that you say what?
I hate to say this, but I do agree with you on this one. And I do think when you watch them early on in the season, you know, Gordon Hayward wasn't getting great separation on drives to the basket. Every time that he fell, he was always falling to the floor. It was like he was worried about landing on his ankle. So we're seeing this during the game. What do you think was going on in practice in September and then in October? You know that he was probably getting outplayed by Jason Tatum. I think, like, to me, if I'm the Celtics, I'm thinking, yeah, I know we're paying you a lot of money, but you got to catch up to us. We're not going to catch up to you. I agree. I think the way to do it was to kind of go into the season the way you ended last year. Obviously, Kyrie Irving is going to be starting. I think that did create some friction. But, again, Terry Rozier was a revelation in the playoffs last year. Same thing with Jason Tatum. It was Jason Tatum, dunk three-pointer, who gave them the lead against Cleveland with 5 minutes to go. Then LeBron and Jeff Green took over. But you had those two guys, and you had Jaylen Brown. And it seems like their kind of contributions have been minimized this year, and I think it's kind of hurting the team. And their chemistry just isn't good. I still trust them come playoff time, or maybe I'm being crazy, because I do think if you look at the NBA playoffs, when the playoffs start in the East, to me there are three guys who are accomplished postseason players. One of them is Dwayne Wade, who still has to get into the playoffs, and right now he's a sixth man, but I do trust him late. The other two are Kyrie Irving, champion, Kawhi Leonard, MVP of an NBA Finals. So I trust those guys come playoff time. Everyone else is kind of a question mark. Yeah, we love Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons. How did they do last year in the second round? Milwaukee, yeah, Giannis is great. They play hard. They got good players. They've never won a playoff series. And Indiana doesn't have Oladipo. That's why I still trust Kyrie Irving, because the big thing that they didn't have in those final 5 minutes against Cleveland last year was a closer. So you can say whatever you want about Kyrie. He's a little flaky. He always seems unhappy. There's something else going on with Kyrie Irving, but the dude can close out games.
Frank Isola, right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Do you believe in Philly?
I do. I love the trades that they made.
I believe in their starters. I don't believe in their bench.
Yeah, exactly. And, the trade that they made with Harris, that's the one that kind of hurt their bench a little bit. But the way they started the season, and I felt bad for Markelle Fultz. I was like, man, you're going to start Markelle Fultz and Ben Simmons in the starting backcourt? One refuses to take three-pointers, Ben Simmons. The other one can't make them, which was Markelle Fultz. I was like, this is not going to work. But how many teams go out during the course of a season and make two trades like that? They went out and got Jimmy Butler, who, listen, come playoff time, he's going to be tough because he can defend, he can make big shots, and I like Tobias Harris. I think Tobias Harris is one of the more underrated players. So to me, where they were at the start of the season and where they are now is vastly improved. The big thing is going to be, Joel Embiid, who I thought last season looked a little out of shape in the playoffs, looked a little fatigued in fourth quarters, and Ben Simmons, is he going to want the ball in the fourth quarter, or is he going to be worried about going to the free throw line? And we know the situation with the three-point shots. That's not going to change anytime soon. But I always kind of felt like Ben Simmons sometimes didn't want to drive late in the game, didn't want the ball because he didn't want to get fouled and have to go to that free throw line and make big free throws in the final 2 minutes of the game.
Frank Isola, let's transition for a second. I don't mean to depress you because you're my buddy and I got love for you, but I got to bring up the New York Knicks right now. I'm getting very worried. Here's why. Obviously, they're horrible, and they are aiming to get the number one overall pick in the NBA draft. We know that's going to be Zion Williamson, okay? Here's the other side. They got enough cap space for two max players, but Brooklyn's expected to. Clippers are expected to. Lakers going to have max space for at least one. And I'm looking at it from the standpoint, it is entirely possible the New York Knicks might not have anyone that wants to come play with them. To that you say what? Yeah. What can you tell us?
Yeah, and I think, come on, you know as better than anybody. All we've been hearing all year long is about Kevin Durant to the New York Knicks, and I think a lot of that has to do with the building and, the possibilities that New York has to offer, much like LeBron going to the Lakers. But I think winning 15 games this year certainly hasn't helped them. If they do get the number one pick, knock yourself out. I think that'd be great. I would not trade the pick for Anthony Davis. I know a lot of people have brought that up. I think if you can get Zion Williamson, to me, the guy he's like larger than life already. I think that's too big of a move for me. I'm keeping Zion Williamson. But it's a concern. But I still say, Steve, you go around the NBA, a lot of people think Durant is going to come to the New York Knicks. What would concern me, if I'm a Knicks fan, just like the Laker fan, LeBron James, we all know, is a great player, all-time great player.
Right.
But if I'm a Laker fan, I don't care that you won championships in Miami and you won one in Cleveland. I'm like, what are you doing for me in L.A.? I don't care that you're making a lot of movies. That's great. Knock yourself out. What are you doing for me in terms of championship? And that's the only thing that worries me about Durant. Now, Durant is younger than LeBron. He's going to be 31 in September. But is this really about building your empire and your brand? Because if I'm a Knicks fan, I'm thinking, I don't really care about that. We haven't won a championship since 1973. I want you just as more focused on basketball than ever before, because you don't have Russell Westbrook and you don't have Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. I need you to bring it like you've never brought it before, because 4 years from now, if they don't even get to a conference finals, Knicks fans aren't going to be saying, isn't it great that we had Kevin Durant and he built his business empire? You don't hang banners for guys building their empire.
So what are you saying, that if Kevin Durant comes, he has to come with someone?
Well, I don't think he would come unless he brings somebody.
Right.
But I think for me, if I'm the Knicks, I want him to come with the right attitude. The off-the-court stuff is great. We've seen Amari do it. We saw Carmelo do it. Everybody comes to New York. There are a lot of different things going on. But you're coming to New York. The expectations are going to be through the roof. And I think at the bare minimum, getting to a conference finals, and that might not even placate Knicks fans. They want to see a championship banner finally raised.
I don't know if I agree with you on that, Frank. I mean, if you're the New York Knicks, you've been so deplorable, so pathetic all of these years. I think getting to the playoffs and getting out of the first round is a success next year, no matter who's here.
But that's my point, though. It didn't happen in L.A. And it was all this stuff that LeBron was going to do, which is great. On his free time, he's going to be involved. Got a show on HBO, got the thing on Showtime. He's got 9 million different things. He's making Space Jam. That's great. But the Laker fan is thinking, man, hang on a second. We went out and got the best player in the league, and we're basically in the same spot.
But you can't compare. But you can't compare the Lakers to the Knicks situation, because even though they hadn't been to the playoffs the previous 5 years, they've had championships each decade. The Knicks haven't won a title since 1973.
No. And also, here's the other thing, too. The Lakers have more talent that LeBron would be inheriting. I'm not include the number one pick right now, but Kuzma and the other guys, he actually had more than what the Knicks have on their roster now. But the one advantage, and this is the thing, to me, this is the great appeal for Kawhi Leonard and for Kevin Durant about the Eastern Conference. You stay in the East, you can rule the East. Because, they're good teams, the Celtics and the Sixers, but a lot of the talent is still out West. So, like, if Kawhi Leonard left Toronto, and if you're Kevin Durant, why wouldn't you be thinking, man, if I go play for one of these teams in the East, whether it's the Brooklyn Nets or it's the New York Knicks, I could dominate the Eastern Conference. And it's not like, LeBron went West, and he was, I get it, they were in fourth place at one time, but he's not even making the playoffs. That's how tough the West is. In the East, it's still a little bit easier. After all these years, the Eastern Conference is still a much easier road to an NBA Finals for a player.
I'd be remiss in not bringing up the Houston Rockets, considering what we've seen from James Harden. Number one, who's your league MVP, him or Giannis? Number two, are the Houston Rockets a team that you believe is ready to knock off the Warriors?
Yeah, dealing with the MVP, for the longest time for me, it was going to be Giannis. Now I got, and I do have a vote, and next week I'm going to start looking at the stuff. And I mentioned it, you and I talked about it before. Every time James Harden does something, it's like it's in the same sentence with Wilt, Kobe, and Michael Jordan. It's ridiculous the scoring that this guy has done. His scoring averages through the roof, and he carried that team. They were in 14th place at one point, and they had a lot of guys hurt. And we talked all last season about how LeBron carried the Cleveland Cavaliers. Well, James Harden is carrying the Houston Rockets this season. But I do think the media, and you know this, Steve, a lot of times they like the stories. There was that one year where Steve Nash, I think, won his second one, and I thought it should have been either Kobe or Shaq. So the media voting, sometimes it's like, all right, we gave it to Harden last year. Maybe Giannis will be the guy. So always factor that in. And I do believe in the Rockets. The Rockets were up 3-2 last year. And Chris Paul, in the two biggest games of his life, didn't play because he had a hamstring injury. I think they have confidence that they can take out the Golden State Warriors. So, and if you're up 3-2 in a series, to me that proves you're good enough to win. They did not have a good Game 6. Game 7 they had a double-digit lead. Trevor Ariza couldn't make a shot, neither could Harden. But to me, that was more about Chris Paul being hurt. So if Chris Paul can be healthy in the playoffs for once, I do like the Houston Rockets.
I think everybody's missing out on the fact that this is the last year at the Oracle. Whether it's DeMarcus Cousins, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, or Kevin Durant, I think 2 of those 4 will be gone after this season. I think they are highly motivated to close out this era with a three-peat. I think people are missing out on that particular motivation, and I'm not even giving Houston nor anybody else that big of a chance. I don't believe it.
But here's the thing, though, Steve. Last year when they were down 3-2, once again, it was Klay Thompson bailing him out in that Game 6. And then in the Game 7, Klay Thompson got out, and then Kevin Durant drove him to the finish line. I just wonder, for the reasons you brought up, kind of like this idea that this might be the last go-around if they do get down in a playoff series. And they were down double digits in that game in Golden State. And to their credit, they fought through it. I just wonder if this year, similar situation, maybe they won't be in a situation like that. But if they are, I wonder if there might be a little resignation, like, you know what, the run is finally over. Well, I guess we'll have to see.
Frank Isola, always appreciate you, man. Keep doing a great job at The Athletic. Miss you at the New York Daily News. You know I'm going to listen to you. Channel 207 on Sirius XM, your NBA show in the morning. Keep doing it, my man. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Steve.
All right. One and only Frank Isola right here with Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Sean out there in Compton. Feel free to call back, my brother. I'm waiting for you. You're listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. By the way, ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Quote, buy and save on home insurance with Progressive's new Quote Explorer. Only at Progressive.com. The Stephen A. Smith Show is being brought to you by Barbasol. Hey, sports fans. Barbasol is offering you a chance to score big when you join the Barbasol Shave Club. Grab your premium starter kit for just $1.99 today with code SHAVE at Barbasol.com.
Need game tickets? Find yours.
Coming on the show and talking to us about some NBA items that we needed to touch on. I wanted to revisit what we were talking about earlier in the show when I brought up the passing of Nipsey Hussle, rap artist extraordinaire, who was gunned down, slain by a particular individual. According to the report, somebody named Eric Holder. It was not gang-related, but it was a personal beef. Nevertheless, I brought up, violence, black-on-black crime, etc. A caller, excuse me for forgetting his name so quickly, but he called up to complain about praising Nipsey Hussle because he said, how are we supposed to look at former gangbangers and what have you? And I talked about his philanthropy, bringing businesses to the area, doing everything that he could to eradicate gang violence, etc. This is why he was praised and celebrated by Russell Westbrook last night, by LeBron James, by Kevin Durant, by Steph Curry, by Paul George and others, CP3 as well. And then a caller by the name of Sean, right out of Compton, straight out of Compton, called up a few minutes ago, said he is a member of a gang. He is a member of the Bloods, who obviously are opposite the Crips, of course. And he was enlightening me and our listeners about exactly what life was like. I asked him to stop what he was saying and to call back when I could give him a few extra minutes so he could explain to me and all the listeners out there exactly what it's like. Because I'm 50. Yeah, I'm from the streets of New York. I'm 51. I wouldn't know. I'm not going to pretend to know what he knows. So I appreciate Sean calling back. He's on the line right now. Sean, the floor is yours. Break it down to us, what you were telling me.
Thank you, Stephen. Hey, man. Well, basically what I was saying, man, is everybody has an opinion about, gang violence and, what goes on, man. And it's spread all across the nation and really all across overseas and in the military, you name it. You know what I mean? But nobody actually knows what it's like to live in the city of Los Angeles and surrounding areas. You know what I mean? And it's not people, I hear all the time, gangbang is stupid and blah, blah, blah. But no, it is, I agree. Black people killing each other is stupid, but it's survival. We didn't create it, but there's no such thing as saying that you're not from somewhere. And, for somebody to just come out and this man, he's not even cold yet, man. The whole city of L.A. is hurting. Both sides, Bloods and Crips, because we love that dude. It's like when Pac died or when Biggie died. That's how the magnitude of his passing over something that was so stupid. And the guy that your previous caller that I followed up behind was like, yeah, it was over, him calling somebody a snitch. We're not all animals, man. Just because we were in gangs or we represent a certain section of our neighborhood or a certain section of Los Angeles, we're not all animals, man. But we're people, and people can't grow.
Let me interrupt. Let me interrupt you for a second to get direct. You said when you called before hour number 2 started, you said that just because you're a member of a gang doesn't mean you're a gang banger or you're gang banging. Talk to us about that for a second in terms of what you have to deal with and how you think that that's a mistake or a misnomer that people put out there. Enlighten us to that real quickly.
Well, like I said, man, I'm Stephen. I'm 42 years old, man. I'll be 42 in August. I've done my gang banging. When you come up gang banging, once you reach a certain age in a certain mind state, you're no longer out there doing things that gang bangers do. You're really trying to pull the people that's out there doing gang banging type things. You're really trying to bring them in and onto your level. When you become a gang member, you're always going to be from where you're from, Stephen. Man. There's no way you cannot denounce that. I've known people that have. You know what I mean? But
what happened to them when they denounced where they were from or who they were affiliated with?
Depends. A lot of them moved away. A lot of them got put off their hood. You know what I mean? They got put off their set. And when you get put off their set, for your listeners that don't know, they pretty much beat the hell out you into submission until you're done. You know what I mean? Not done like, you know, a lot of them. Sometimes you might even get killed, but basically you're getting put off, and that means that you have no more parts of anything, and your reputation, your respect level, all of that it diminishes, man.
And you have no protection. I mean? And you have no protection
at all. No, you don't have any protection, and you know, some people, you know, they just figure like, okay, look, I'm done with this, and I got kids to raise, man. I got other things to do with my life. But even with that, man, you still gonna be from where you're from. If it's in your heart, it's in your heart. Let me enlighten you about Nipsey real fast.
Okay.
Before you let me go.
Sure, go ahead.
Man, that dude, man. I don't know if anybody knows this, man, but he bought shoes for the 50, I believe it's 54th Street Elementary School for every kid in there. Everybody that worked in his stores, he employed from his neighborhood. That dude in his music, when his first album, yes, he was gangbanging like crazy. His second album, you seen growth, and by the third album, that's why all the NBA stars and all the NFL stars loved him, man, because he wasn't about that life, man. And this was spoken from a guy that's from the other side. He wasn't about that life anymore. He was really trying to do good things in his neighborhood. And for him to get gunned down like that, man, it's like when we lost Pac, man. And my condolences to his whole family, to Lord London, and anybody else in his neighborhood that loved that dude, because the city of LA loved him. You know what I mean? And I want your listeners to understand how big and great this dude was, man. And for him to get gunned down at such a young age, you know, it's really sad.
Well, I think your presence on this show right now epitomizes how much he was loved, because obviously he admitted that he was a former member of the Crips, and you're a Blood, and you're up here calling to praise him.
Yeah, man, and that doesn't happen. That doesn't. And I'm gonna tell you, I mean, to be honest with you, it just doesn't happen. But for somebody, that was my favorite rapper, man. You know what I mean? Because I heard his growth, and I saw what he was doing, and everybody did. You know what I mean? And for the fact that and then they got conspiracies. I know you probably don't know about it, but the government did it. And, he just got caught up on something that, you know, it was stupid. Somebody decided to take a life that wasn't worth taking, man. And I'm sorry for that. And thanks for your time, Stephen.
Man, please, man. No. I don't let anybody. I said you wouldn't have hogged my time if I didn't let you. I wanted you to hog my time. You understand what I'm saying? I definitely wanted my audience to hear you, and I appreciate you, man. Stay safe out there. Keep grinding. Keep doing what you're doing now, because I know you turned your life around. Keep doing what you're doing, my man. Thank you so much.
By the way, Stephen, before I go, man,
sure.
I want to, because I don't want to mislead your listeners, man. I'm born and raised in Compton, man, but I live in Seattle, man, and I've turned my life all the way around. I had to leave because I wasn't raising my kids in the same thing that I was raised in. I'm a garbage man out here, man. You know what I mean? And I provide for my family, and most of the people that I know that have changed their lives, they've moved away, man, because that right there, these youngsters nowadays, man, the drugs that they're on and the things that they're doing, and the way we came up, it's not like how they're coming up. And just like Nipsey got killed, man, it could have been me, and it could have been anybody else that was from LA was just hanging out.
So you related to my point that I told the previous caller when I was talking about this, about where you came from. There's circumstances that you got to overcome, and everybody ain't gonna just allow you to do that. You got to work your way through that to get to that point, and hope that they'll let you out. You agree with that point?
100.
Thank you,
100, man.
Appreciate the knowledge, bro.
On the nose.
Appreciate the knowledge, my man.
Thanks, Stephen A.
Thank
Take
you.
care,
Anytime.
man.
Call back
Appreciate
anytime, bro. Call back anytime.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio and ESPNU for the day. We're usually on ESPN News. Number to call up as always is 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. Sean broke it down. I'm 51 years old. I'm from the streets of New York City. You hear about Crips. You hear about Bloods. You hear about gangs and all that. I don't know anything about that. I don't know anything about what's going on in the streets today. You just heard this cat break down to you what's going on in the streets now. How he had to depart from Compton. How he living in Seattle. You understand how they don't let you out. When you come in from desolate circumstances and all you got is each other and just something as simple as walking to school or walking to the grocery store. You've got to be affiliated with something just to be able to walk those streets peacefully. Because if you're not associated with them, you don't have any protection. And if you departed from them but you still live in the neighborhood, you might not survive. You heard Sean break it down to you. Those are the circumstances Nipsey Hussle came from. And look what he was doing. To eradicate violence in the streets, eradicate gang violence, employing people from his own community, and giving back as much as he possibly could. That's why Russell Westbrook was celebrating him. That's why CP3 and LeBron and KD and Paul George and everybody else sent their condolences. That is why. Because they recognize where the brother came from, where he is. And when you think about it, as you look into the streets, particularly as you're staring in the face of our younger generation, what Nipsey Hussle epitomized is exactly what we aspire for them all. As a nation, we're only as strong as our weakest link. Never forget that. More to Stephen A. Smith Show in a minute. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Cars, homes, boats, motorcycles, RVs, and more at Progressive.com. Back with your calls to close out the show in a second.
Learn what affects your credit scores and what you can do to improve them with Credit Karma. Maybe you need to dispute an error in your credit report, or you're paying too much interest. Credit Karma can help with that. Visit CreditKarma.com or download the app now. That's CreditKarma.com.
Need game tickets? Find your seats at Vivid Seats.
Kentucky under John Calipari, 305 wins first. NCAA tournament wins, 31 first. Final 4 appearances, 4, I believe. That's first. Top 10 recruits, 23 of them. That's first. Lottery picks, 19 of them. 19 of them. Ladies and gentlemen, let me say this. Nobody deserves a lifetime contract. Now, you want to look at stuff like emeritus status, and I got it. I'm talking about active duty. Nobody deserves a lifetime contract. See, my attitude is very, very simple. If you sit in an elevated position where you get to hold people accountable, how do people not hold you accountable? Because you can't touch somebody with a lifetime contract. They can basically do what they want to do. They can't violate ethics clauses or at least flagrantly violate severe ones. But you basically don't have to ever worry about getting fired. I never get that story they told me years ago when the president went to Joe Paterno's house because, you know what, they weren't winning enough games. He wanted Joe Paterno gone. Joe Paterno threw him out of his house. You went to fire the man and he threw you out your house. Get the hell out of here. I'm not going anywhere. And obviously it had a lot to do with the money that Joe Paterno, the late Joe Paterno, generated for the program in the school, and I get that. But nobody deserves a lifetime contract as long as you're in a position to hold other people accountable. Because guess what? Somebody needs to be able to hold you accountable. And how can they do that if you got a lifetime deal? Has nothing to do with John Calipari. I'm opposed to that for anybody who on active duty. There are no lifetime contracts. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll even get political with you for a second and tell you I feel that way. I'm adamant about Supreme Court justices. I don't think they deserve lifetime contracts. I think Supreme Court justices should be a minimum of 45 years of age, and I think Supreme Court justices should have no more than 20 years in the business. No more than 20 years on the court. I don't agree with those lifetime appointments. You got cats in their 80s. I don't want, no.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, and you can always get in touch with the show through the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed.
Get triple action protection for optimal engine performance with Shell V-Power Nitro plus premium gasoline. To the phones we go before we get on out of here. LJ, you're live with Stephen A. What's up?
What's going on, Stephen A? You mentioned that you don't see nobody beating the Warriors, and you also emphasized you wouldn't mind being in Houston for the finals.
Not at all.
My question is, but this is my question, just like you asked Frank Isola, the tendencies don't change overnight. So the Warriors' confrontation with the refs, technical fouls, do you think that's going to play into their success this postseason?
I think that's your best chance to beat the Warriors. Because I think if James Harden dropped 50, it wouldn't be enough to win a 7-game series.
So that they would have to implode themselves.
That's right.
Okay.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Second question.
Yep.
Okay, second question before we go. I did my first team of the second teams today, and I just want to get your thoughts on it. I got Giannis, Kevin Durant, Paul George, Steph Curry, James Harden, first team. Do you have any disagreements with those?
I would question Paul George only because he's tailed off. He was an MVP candidate of mine until he got hurt. But I'll leave it alone. Real quick, what's your second team?
Joel Embiid, LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, Damian Lillard, Russell Westbrook.
I don't think LeBron James deserves to be on the second team this year.
Okay,
those 18 games that he missed were pivotal, and then they nosedived when he got back initially. Over the last several weeks, he's looked great. His numbers are there, but the same impact that he once had, no. And somewhere along the way, we got to think about Bradley Beal and where he belongs. Because Bradley Beal has been something special. He has nothing to work with. But I guess because it's LeBron, you can't demote him below second team because we know he's one of the greatest players in the world. So I got to think about that. Let's talk about it tomorrow, LJ, all right? Thanks a lot for the call. I appreciate it. I got to get on out of here, but I will be back in 22 hours. Until then, I'm signing off. It's Stephen A. Peace and love, everybody. Talk to you tomorrow.
What if the Seahawks don't give Russell Wilson the money he wants? Could you blow them away in a trade offer? 3 number ones for Russell Wilson. Who says no? It's the Will Cain Show, right after Stephen A. Smith.